Hey fam, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your baby girl AE. Today I'm going to bring something different. I know we've done it before, so this is going to seem like a podcast. So yeah, enjoy. Today I'm going to be reviewing Interview with the Vampire. Originally I wanted to do a review on Anirisa's Mayfair Witches, but I just thought of doing this first because this comes before the Mayfair Witches, though it's from a book, Anarisa's books or her novels that she has written. So in the order, Interview with the Vampire comes first before Mayfair Witches. So after this review of Interview with the Vampire, we will now do the Mayfair Witches. That is Anarisa's Mayfair Witches. So let's begin. So before the 2022 Interview with the Vampire, we already had one Interview with the Vampire, which was in 1994. We have cast as Tom Cruise as Lestat the Loncourt, Brad Pitt as Louis de Pont du Lac, Christian Slater as Daniel Molloy, Christian Dust as Claudia. So the Interview with the Vampire in 1994 started on 11th November 1994. Horror, romance, and it was a 2 hour movie by Warner Bros. Entertainment. So the story is, I'm going to go over to telling you about the Interview with the Vampire for 2022, but let me just tell you the storyline that it started with in 1994. It says that after the death of his wife and daughter, Spanish Lord Louis is turned into a vampire by Lestat de Loncourt. To keep Louis by his side, Lestat converts a plague-ridden girl into a vampire as well. So we have director as Neil Jordan and Annie Reese, and produced by Daniel Griffin. This movie is rather a sequel to Queen of the Damned. So after this particular one, that's the Interview with the Vampire, we now had the Queen of the Damned. And the Queen of the Damned is also horror and fantasy. Ran for an hour 44 minutes, and it was in 2002. It was directed by Michael Riemer. It's loosely based on the third novel of Annie Rice's The Vampire Chronicles. Like I said, it's all a book. So produced by Josh Sarliog. It follows the vampire Lestat, who awakens from his slumber and becomes a rock star. When I tell you about the 2022, or rather the story, because that's the one I've actually seen, he loves music. He's so into music. So him being awoken from his slumber and becomes a rock star is no surprise. But chaos strikes when his music awakens Akasha, the vampire queen, who may not rest until she makes Lestat her new king. And unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, a young London lady who is very fascinating and has a dark side falls in love with Lestat instead. And we know that from this Queen of the Damned, Akasha actually, all the immortals actually fear her, so they try not to be on her side because something terrible might actually happen. So that is for the Queen of the Damned. And we have cast as Statutes Townsend as Lestat. It's not the same character anymore. Like, it's not the same person, because from the Interview with the Vampire for 1994, it was Cruise that was Lestat, but this is no longer him. This is Townsend, and Queen Akasha is Alia. That is everything we know from the 1994 Interview with the Vampire and Queen of the Damned in 2002. And I think there was another one in 1988. I haven't confirmed that yet. So right now we're just going to dive into The one which I have actually seen, Annie Reese's interview with the vampire. It's AMC presents with Immortal Universe to interview with the vampire. I don't know why I'm so excited because I think when I first saw the series, or rather when I first saw it when it came out on the 2nd of October 2022, when you've seen a lot of vampire movies, you're like, okay, this could be the same thing again, but with the name and all that, I think my mind didn't really go there, but I was like, okay, fine. So when I started seeing Mayfair Witches, which I said I was going to review later on, I'm like, oh no, I have to. So I had to go back to watch this, or to Bing it rather. And voila, I was so intrigued. Like everything was different for me. The experience of being in this is so different from the other vampire movies I've seen, like the Vampire Diaries by Julie Plec. Before I tell you about the story, we're just going to tell us the cast and the producers and the directors of this movie. So we have executive producer as Roland Jones and Mark Johnson, and directed by Alan Taylor, created for television and written for television by Roland Jones as well. We also have executive producers as Annie and Christopher Reese, that's she, the writer, and her son. And we have cast as Jacob Anderson as Louis Dupont Dulac, Sam Reed as Lestat de Leoncourt, Eric Bogosan as Daniel Molloy, that is the journalist and Professor Daniel Molloy, and we have Bailey Bars as Claudia. It is 2022, 2nd October 2022 to present, has one season, 7 episodes, and it's a gothic fiction based on the Vampire Chronicle by Anne Rici in the year 2022. Louis is a vampire who lives in Dubai and seeks to tell the story of his life, or rather, he's dead, he's a vampire, his afterlife, to renowned journalist Daniel Molloy. Beginning in the early 20th century in New Orleans, the story follows his relationship with the vampire Lestat and their found family, including teen fledgling Claudia. Together, the vampire family endures immortality in New Orleans and beyond. As the interview continues in Dubai, Molloy discovers the truth beneath Louis' story. So I have my consent, I things that I didn't really love about it. So the series starts with Professor Daniel Molloy, our award-winning writer, the journalist himself, a box. He trying to open it, and then he sees an invitation from the vampire Louis. So he, with the letter, or rather the invitation, came with tapes of a previous interview that was done, but it didn't really go as planned. That's the first time, the initial time. So he invited him, that's the vampire Louis, invited him over for a redo, because at that particular time they were both comfortable in their flesh and they have grown over time, so they really wanted to do it again. But Daniel wasn't really comfortable because from the last time they had issues and misunderstandings, and he just felt that okay, maybe things wouldn't be the way it was before, but he just wanted to hear him out, and he feels that Louis should be matured enough at that particular time for them to sit down and do the interview again. It was a do-over, like Daniel said. Daniel, as we knew, was dying. He had a Parkinson disease, and then coupled with the pandemic and the disease that the world was fighting at that particular time. But it felt like Louis was just trying to rub it in when he told him that you've aged so much, and he's like, yeah, we get it. I actually liked the way the movie started. At first I was confused, but I really got into it and I was enjoying every bit of it. At first I was when I saw Lestat, I just knew that something was different from him. I know that producers and actors, I know this was even a book because I had some critics in my head. Like I was saying, why would they? I mean, the way they kept attributing God and saying, when Lestat kept saying that he's a God, that God doesn't listen and all that. So I'm like, okay, why would it? But I mean, it was a book. So Annie had her own thoughts about everything that she put down. So this was them remaking what she had written in her thought process. They start always pointing out to Louis that he was intelligent, he ran businesses and all, but he had something that he kept hiding in him that for people not to know and his family. And maybe I feel like everybody would have been surprised that he was gay, but Lester already knew. Because I mean, when he first saw him at the Liberty Street, when he put out a knife on his brother, and I think at that moment that's when he knew that, okay, I have found a companion, a predator companion that was going to be with me forever. I think that was the entire thought. And then him doing all the tricks on Louis, and I think from what Louis said, that he was intrigued by everything, and that made him like want to keep coming back. But I didn't even understand the reason why Lester had to kill Miss Lily. Okay, for me, or rather in his own thinking, is like Lily was a distraction. But when Louis was making excuses that Lestat turned him into what he was and all, I mean, you accepted it. You knew who he was. It was just for you to walk away. But you nodded when he said, nod and give me an affirmation that you want this. He nodded. He said, okay. I don't even know how Louis and then Claudia, the entire thing with the three of them. I know they wanted a new fun family and all, but I mean, it was just too much.
He's gonna make your daughter jump a broom. I'm sitting right here. Plenty of brooms down the street at the Mayfair Sisters home. He's calling me a witch,
So much.
Mama.
But I love the accent. I think what was different for me in this series is the fact that, when the sunburn starts and you see its point. Okay, I know I've seen other vampire series. It's like a skin roasting. You could see fire, but for this series, it's like a water pour. Like they just turned on water and they're pouring it on you. That's how it actually feels. And then the nails, it was so visible that okay, it was something fixed. Well, okay, I think by the time season 2 comes out or the continuation of season 1, maybe that would be done. That would be fixed. And I just love the acting. Sam Reed did a lot of like the way he starts. I mean, the real things for me when Louis was eating the animal in front of Professor Daniel, I was so irritated. It was disgusting. But for me, if I was there, I wouldn't even continue the dish I was eating. But they made everything real. The props, the setting, it was recreated in the sense that it didn't they were not doing verbatim of what was on Annie's book. They had to, that's why they had someone who did for television. So I know some things were actually cut out from the book, but it was amazing. Everything, like the accent, I was so for me, watching this movie kept me on hold. Like I just kept looking. I wanted to keep listening. Like everything was so magnificent. And I think I actually cried when Paul fell off the roof. That wasn't Louis' fault, and I don't think he should have been blamed for it. I think that was everything pushed him to the edge. But I love the fact that even after he turned, he still kept his sisters in mind. Even after he turned, he still kept his sister in mind. He kept visiting and keeping money. But I knew that there's no how you be around family for so long and something wouldn't trip. For instance, when he was with the baby and almost ate him, I think Dana kept asking, did you eat the baby? It's and it's the intense conversation that Daniel has with him to keep asking questions and all. But I think at the end of episode 2, I felt like Daniel was loosening up. So the incredibly good Sexy Scary award acting by Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson. The pairing of the leads. I mean, Louis and Lesnat, their acting was good. I mean, but it's the race components for me. I think there was a part where Paul and I think it was Paul and Louis, or Paul and Grace. Sorry, or Louis and Grace. where he was saying that he's not white but he's French, and she's like, oh, that's another color, French and white. So the component of the race was really different, and dealing with the times, it just adds another juicy layer on this, I mean, the homoerotic elements left out in the series. Anyway, most people complain that the movie is trash as compared to the book, but I haven't read any of Annie Reese's books, so I wouldn't really say. But for me, I love the accent, and I loved how Louis' family, the way he cared for them, the way he cared for Grace, and I'm wanting to see more of Grace. The goodbyes at the episode, I think it was 6 or 7, was unbearably sad. And I hope we see Grace and especially Claudia. Claudia was really good and her acting was amazing. Anyway, the show also seems to have an interesting build. The climax in the middle when everyone's fighting themselves and somehow again in the season finale. I mean, I felt like Louis tried to find himself from the very beginning. Even when the very first time he met Lesnat, he tried to find himself. And when he became the vampire, he tried to, for me, the way I understood it, he tried to think about it like, is he a good vampire or is he a bad vampire? Like, and the costumes, the accent, the scenery, I just couldn't stop. Even though this was very far from the original adaptation, that's the 1994, but it was still amazing. And I love that they captured the atmosphere in the series. I just can't stop talking about Lesnat's amazing accent. I know Louis' accent was good, but Lesnat killed it. And I loved how open-minded the homoerotic love story, along with the scary elements of vampirism. This series actually gives both positive and negative sides to an immortal vampire. And focusing on the themes of this series as racial and sexual identity, violence and sexual concepts was really shown a lot, especially during the feeding from humans, feeding from the animals. I think I made mention of that. So like all those things put together. But the series was lovely so far. It is lovely. And I think what I've noticed from all the vampire series I've been seeing is that New Orleans is another, like, that's where all the original, like for originals and Vampire Diaries and some other series, vampire series I've seen, that's where everything always originates from. And wow, it's, I would love to really read more about the origin of New Orleans. This series is amazing. I would love to see more and more of it. Next up, we are just going to wait for next week for the review of Mayfair, which is. But I would want to tell you that Interview with the Vampire is superb. And I think another thing I noticed is the fact that they don't heal on time. I've seen when Louis gets burnt, skin doesn't heal on time, like others I've seen. So maybe it's just from this particular series, but I just hope they will do more. And this series is amazing. Like I've said, try and see Interview with the Vampire. I'm going to give this series an 8/10, and hoping that new things are being corrections, and hoping that things are being adjusted, and beautiful accent. The cast, the crew, and everybody on this set, amazing, amazing, amazing. All right, guys, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, and keep supporting me. I love you.